January 25th, 2015, from the University of Phoenix Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. It was the 2015 Pro Bowl between Team Irvin and Team Carter. So they had like a fantasy draft between the two team captains, and they drafted their players and they played the Pro Bowl in the site of the Super Bowl, which is going to be coming up next week. But in this game, they had a little bit different. They didn't have kickoffs. They would just place the ball on the 25s. That's where the teams would start off. They also changed possession at the end of each quarter. They did have punts, but like I said, no kickoffs in the game. So it was something a little bit different than what you really usually see out of football. And there wasn't really much defense, although we did see J.J. Watt get a fumble recovery and an interception. But as for the scoring in this game, in the first quarter, Team Irvin got on the scoreboard first as Adam Vinatieri hit a 32-yard field goal. That was at the 9.5-minute mark. That put Team Irvin up 3-0. Then about 5.5 minutes into the left in the first quarter, Greg Olsen caught a 17-yard touchdown pass from Andrew Luck, and that put Team Carter up 7-3 over Team Irvin. Then a little over a minute later, with just over 4 minutes left to play in the first, Matthew Stafford hit Emmanuel Sanders for a 10-yard touchdown. That put Team Irvin back ahead with the score now Team Irvin 9, Team Carter 7, as we actually had a missed extra point by Vinatieri as they had the extra points back at the 25, so they're more like 35-yard field goals. And so then, with a half a minute left in the first quarter, Andrew Luck threw a second touchdown pass of the game, this one to T.Y. Hilton, as he hooked up with his teammate for a 14-yard touchdown pass, and that gave Team Carter a 4-point lead, with the score Team Carter 13, Team Irvin 9. So that was it for the first quarter scoring. Then in the second quarter, it was Team Irvin who would take back the lead with a 6-yard touchdown pass from Matthew Stafford to Jimmy Graham. And that made the score Team Irvin 16, Team Carter 13. That was with a little less than 10 minutes left before halftime. Then with a little less than 6 minutes left before halftime, Adam Vinatieri kicked a 28-yard field goal, and that made it 19-13, Team Irvin over Team Carter as they extended their lead to 6. But then with just less than 2 minutes left before halftime, 2 minutes left in the second quarter, Drew Brees hit Jordy for a 21-yard touchdown, and that put Team Carter back up by 1 with the score Team Carter 20, Team Irvin 19. So that'd be the score at halftime. Then in the third quarter, less than 2 minutes in, just about a minute and a half in, Drew Brees threw his second touchdown pass of the game. This one a 10-yard touchdown to Greg Olsen, and that put Team Carter up 28-19 as they extended their lead. They actually had a 2-point conversion as Drew Brees hit T.Y. Hilton for the 2-point conversion. So they added 8 points, and that extended their lead to 9. So it was 28-19, Team Carter over Team Irvin. And that would be it for the next 10 minutes or so. But with less than 2 minutes left in the third, Matt Ryan hit Emmanuel Sanders. So Emmanuel Sanders caught a second touchdown of this game from two different quarterbacks. And this one was a 1-yard touchdown pass from Matt Ryan. It was now a 3-point game as Vinatieri missed the extra point yet again. And so it would be a 3-point game instead of a 2-point game with the score Team Carter 28, Team Irvin 25. That would be it for the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, there wasn't really much scoring until with just over 3 minutes left to play, Matt Ryan hit Jimmy Graham. It was a NFC South connection from the Falcon to the Saint, and it was a 1-yard touchdown pass to Jimmy Graham that put Team Irvin up by 4 points. Vinatieri did kick the extra point that time, and so now it's Team Irvin 32, Team Carter 28, and Team Irvin holds on to win. So Team Irvin wins the Pro Bowl, and after the game, Michael Irvin was saying that he wanted to take on Jerry Rice in next year's Pro Bowl, as Rice had won it last year against Team Sanders. But Team Irvin with the victory with the final score, Team Irvin 32, Team Carter 28. And in this game, for Team Irvin, Matthew Stafford was 15 for 25 with 316 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So he's actually intercepted by J.J. Watt. And then we had Tony Romo, who was 4 for 6 with 43 yards, and Matt Ryan, who led Team Irvin to victory in the fourth quarter. So he was 11 for 16, 104 yards passing, and 2 touchdowns. And also for Team Irvin, on rushing, we had Mark Ingram with 11 carries for 72 yards, with an average of 6.5. Darren Sproles had 3 carries for 42 yards. That was an average of 14 yards per carry. DeMarco Murray had 3 carries for 18 yards. That's an average of 6. C.J. Anderson had 5 carries for 16 yards. In receiving for Team Irvin, Golden Tate had 2 receptions for 98 yards, as he averaged almost 50 yards per catch. Odell Beckham Jr. had 5 receptions for 89 yards, and Darren Sproles had 6 receptions for 79 yards to go along with his 42 yards rushing off of the 3 carries we mentioned a moment ago. And Emmanuel Sanders had 5 receptions for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jason Witten had 4 receptions for 32 yards. And Jimmy Graham had 3 receptions for 30 yards and 2 touchdowns. And on Team Carter, Drew Brees he was 13 for 21 with 163 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Andrew Luck was nearly perfect, as he was 9 for 10. Only had 1 incompletion. He had 119 yards and 2 touchdowns in the game, starting things off. He was the number 1 pick overall in the fantasy draft that they had between Team Carter and Team Irvin. Andy Dalton was 9 for 20 with 69 passing yards. The leading rusher for Team Carter was John Kuhn, the fullback from Green Bay, had 2 carries for 31 yards. And Justin Forsett, the running back from Baltimore, had 3 carries for 31 yards, so they tied. And Alfred Morris had 5 carries for 29 yards, and Jamal Charles had 4 carries for 25 yards. Not really a running game, it's more of a passing game, loose defense. J.J. Watt, though, he was out there playing. Get that fumble recovery and that interception, as we mentioned earlier. But for receiving for Team Carter, Antonio Brown had 6 receptions for 98 yards, and Justin Forsett had 5 receptions for 53 yards to go along with his 31 yards rushing. Greg Olsen, the tight end from Carolina, had 3 receptions for 52 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jordy Nelson had 3 receptions for 41 yards and a touchdown. And T.Y. Hilton had 3 receptions for 40 yards and a touchdown as well. The leading tackler in the game was Lawrence Timmons from Pittsburgh. He had 9 tackles for Team Carter. And Von Miller, the Denver Bronco, had 8 tackles for Team Irvin to be their leading tackler. And Elvis Dumerville had 2 sacks in this game. Those were the only 2 sacks in this game, and that was for Team Irvin. And Brent Grimes had an interception, and as we mentioned multiple times at this point, J.J. Watt also had an interception as well. So the final score, Team Irvin 32, Team Carter 28, and that's the 2015 Pro Bowl from Arizona.